Hello everyone, welcome to my channel, and this channel is for educational purposes, and we focus on great theories of everything ancient and modern and try to help the listener figure out the best ways to use these things in their life, um, help you out with your quest for a better spiritual, mental, physical health, your paradigm shifting, your awakening to 5D consciousness, your formation of a holistic worldview, or maybe some other purpose that you have within you. And we focus on mostly obscure things that you probably haven't heard of before, that I've come across in over 30 years of digging. And today is our 84th video that we've done on the book called Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha by Daniel Ingram. And I chose this book because I think it is the best book that I've seen on, maybe not the best, most comprehensive, and at least one of the best that I've seen on Buddhist meditation, on meditation in general. I don't have any specific allegiance to Buddhism. I think that anybody can use the tools that are provided in this book, regardless of what religion, if any, that you have. And I don't believe that Ingram is really trying to convert anybody into Buddhism, hence the title, Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha. Daniel Ingram has spent a lot of time in this book denigrating and mocking many of the peripheral teachings of the Buddha, or of Buddhism, the stuff that was related to marketing and deification and guru worship and ritual. All of these things are not part of the core teachings. The core teachings, in Ingram's estimation, have to do with getting better at concentration meditation and insight meditation, along with ethics or morality. And he provides a lot of maps that will help you identify how you're doing, and techniques to get better, and even especially in terms of insight meditation, just to inform you of what it is that you're trying to do and why. So for the concentration meditation, you're focusing on an object like your breathing or a candle flame, or a ball, colored ball, or something to that effect, and you're trying to stay focused on that. With your insight meditation, you are trying to open up your five senses and your mental sensations, and investigate all of those sensations for the three characteristics. And as you begin to do that, your mind becomes kind of more efficient and works faster, and you can identify more and more and more sensations. And as you do that, you begin to cycle through what he calls the stages of insight. And each time you go through a cycle, which is no small feat, you enlighten yourself by degrees. So the concentration meditation is really for really cultivating exotic states of consciousness. They call jhanas, or states of consciousness, bliss, and keep you motivated to meditate. And also then the insight meditation, the purpose of insight meditation is to confer wisdom. Now, we're on a chapter, or in the section of the book, where Ingram talks mainly about his autobiography. Like how did he get to the point where he, began to spend so much time in the Far East at Buddhist meditation, and how he uh, went really gung-ho about it, and how he went about kind of making it around the cycle. And he went on the last couple days talking about his childhood, how he had various experiences when he was a little kid that he feels like helped him. Um, the school that he went to, and taking long hikes when he was in the Boy Scouts, and a couple of lucid dreams that he had. And now we are at the point where he had just kind of gotten through, I believe he's gotten through college, but I don't think he's started going to grad school, where he and his buddy, who's just a little bit ahead of him, who had already gone on a couple long retreats. And he noticed that his buddy Kenneth had, it seemed like the retreats had really done Kenneth a lot of good. And so he went on his first retreat, and that's where we're at right now. So we'll start resume in his life in 1994, on his first meditation retreat. As a hopefully instructive and normalizing aside, when I started my first retreat that summer in 1994 at IMS, which is, I think, the Integrated Meditation something. I think it's in Boston, but I'm not sure. I quickly realized that I could barely feel my feet. It was not that they were numb or that I couldn't really feel my feet, but my attempts to follow the basic walking meditation instruction. Notice the sensations of the feet touching the ground, of the feet lifting off the ground, of the feet moving through the air, the feet touching the ground again, were nearly completely thwarted by a mind that seemed to have almost no ability to do something that would have seemed trivial had I not done the experiment and found otherwise. My ability to stabilize attention on my feet was nearly non-existent. The sensations were vague, fragmented, confusing, and the wash of frustration, wandering thoughts, and other distracting sensations that poured in nearly eclipsed whatever data was coming in from focusing on my chosen meditation object. Thus it went, walking period after walking period, day after day, and finally, after about 5 days, I resorted to drastic measures and started walking barefoot on the tops of the classic New England rough stone wall that lined the road. Now, I should say here that I am not sure this would be a great solution for everyone, or even for most people, or necessarily anyone other than me in that specific place and time. There might have been a better solution that I just didn't think of or know about. I am not advocating inflicting pain on yourself so that you learn to practice well, though in truth I have done this many times, done in the right circumstances after making sure it won't cause permanent damage. It can at times produce some benefits. I must be careful here, given that the audience of this book might contain some pretty gung-ho practitioners, and it would be very easy to take this too far, which I definitely don't advocate. That said, it worked well, as suddenly the pain rose above the din and chaos of a totally untrained, distracted, ordinary mind, and there was finally some real clarity. Now, it could be argued that there was some clarity that recognized the din of a totally untrained, distracted, ordinary mind, and we could debate the merits of that point of view. But for practical purposes, the din had been going on for years and gotten me no place good. There were feet, there were stones, there was pain, and lots of it. I'm not into pain, just in case anyone thinks I am sounding masochistic, or that I am fetishizing pain in any way. However, it was a very strange relief to suddenly be able to notice a universe of sensations where before there had been only extremely frustrating vagueness. Every little prick, sting, burn, and scratch was experienced suddenly with a level of detail and precision that had until then been lacking, and while quite unpleasant, it felt like I was finally beginning to get what was going on, what I was there to perceive. When I have told people this story, many have responded with statements like, "You've got to write that down," as people probably think that because now you can do all sorts of cool stuff with your mind, that from the beginning you were just a natural or aberration or something. In fact, this is not true at all. I started out with the same messy, disorganized, attentionally flabby mind that most everyone going on retreats begins with. I was also very committed to changing that. When I started practicing and realized that even the most basic and seemingly simple instructions were entirely beyond my capabilities, that really rankled my pride. It grated against my dearly held vision of myself that I should be able to follow more than 3 breaths in a row without being invaded by my neurotic stuff, to say nothing of being able to feel my 2 feet upon the ground. Many people consider pride and having a vision of ourselves being a specific way as antithetical to spiritual ideals such as humility and dissolving any sense of a self at all. It is not that humility isn't a very good thing. Dissolving any sense of an observer, controller, or doer is a very good idea, and basically most of the point of all this. However, in relative terms, having a vision of yourself in which you aspire to have a well-trained mind, well-developed attentional control, and strong sensate clarity are of such inherent and fundamental value, in my view, that any positive hook that gets you some strong fingerhold in that territory, or even a good glimpse that you can remember to keep yourself motivated to practice enthusiastically and well, makes that hook skillful. It is very important to identify your own personal skillful motivators and work with them, allocating their energy for practice. What drives you? Why are you into these things? Most of us are into strong practice for a mix of reasons, most of which are common, but each of us has our own personal story, our vision of ourselves, the demons we are wrestling with, our dreams and goals that get us out of bed in the morning, our own great archetypes of mastery that call to our deepest longings and aspirations. If we know what those are and can draw on them to keep going and keep on pushing ourselves to continue to transform our hearts and minds in truly amazing ways, we will likely do much better. What are the recognized hooks that compel people to practice well? I have already mentioned one of them, pride. I do not mean the afflicted variety that is synonymous with conceit, but that positive quality by which we have set a high standard for ourselves of what we are capable of accomplishing and perceiving. I value the idea of having a mind that is clear, bright, easily directed, nimble, quick, steady, broad, deep, inclusive, powerful, and that directly perceives the truths of experience as its baseline. I value the ideal that we can be kind, compassionate, mature, poised, equanimous, I'm not sure, and doing good in the world. I value the ideal that we can be a people with a vast range of capabilities, with profound and nuanced understandings and a great ability to help others, as well as the openness and realism to accept the cold, hard facts of being born mammal, a mortal mammal. Call it skillful vanity, enlightened self-interest, confidence, divine pride, or whatever mixed term acknowledges the pitfalls of this point of view while recognizing its great potential to inspire skillful striving that can't transform our own and others' lives in that can transform our own and others' lives in very positive ways. Pride, as distinct from its shadow aspect of arrogance or conceit, was one of my primary motivators and a strong one. Many have pointed out that they detect, in addition to the pride I have taken in practicing well and sharing the fruits of these explorations with others, an arrogance verging on hubris in this work. Their point is clearly valid. That said, arrogance and something that I am called upon to work with daily in my job as an emergency medicine physician. And all I can say is that this profession has served as an antidote to arrogance, as the facts of mortality and the suffering inherent in the human condition are uniquely humbling, but which thankfully do not dampen my enthusiasm for either meditation or medicine. About 6 days into that first retreat, after various episodes of back, neck, and jaw pain, as well as the discomfort in my feet from walking on stone walls, I was just sitting there, and suddenly I noticed that my body was not solid, but instead made of zillions of tiny particles of energy, all moving around, zipping in and out of reality, and my body exploded. Everything flashed black and white, and I felt as if I had been dropped back onto my cushion from space. After that, I was hyper-energetic, hyper-philosophical, and yet convinced that philosophy as I knew it held no further answers. But I had no idea what to do next. No one told me what had happened, or what the stages that followed the arising and passing away event could do to you. And shortly thereafter, I quit my electrical engineering undergrad program. I guess he was still undergrad. I quit my electrical engineering undergrad program and went to India for about a year to meditate and do some volunteer service. I'd been getting straight A's in that electrical engineering program and loved it. I also hoped it would get me a better job than my English BA had gotten me. Okay, so he had graduated, but he was getting another major. Further, when I got to differential equations, I felt like I was staring in wonder at the language of God. Differential equations describe lots of systems uncannily well, but they are particularly apt at describing systems involving the oscillation of potential and manifest energy, as well as any other vibrating system. To me, it was like the deepest philosophy, the key to the essence of what was really going on. That differential equations do their magic using a number that doesn't exist, the square root of -1, interestingly called I, was unusually profound to me at the time. I attribute that profound appreciation and remarkable ease of understanding of the deeper meaning and uses of differential equations to having crossed the arising and passing away event, which is the fourth stage of insight and one of the first real major landmark. The stuff about differential equations is interesting, and perhaps Ingram would benefit from studying the reciprocal system of theory from Dewey B. Larson. I've got 580 some videos on there on this channel in case he's spying on me or something, or somebody knows him. That's the end of that chapter, and we're going to chapter 47, which is called Thank You, India. And the U is just a U. My first wife and I ended up in India due to many complex factors, but some major ones stand out. First, as mentioned, I had crossed the arising and passing away again on my August 1994 9-day retreat at IMS. And somehow it strongly sparked my interest in doing something more directly helpful to people than the electrical engineering program was likely to lead to. So I began seriously thinking about medical school again for the first time since I took my MCATs after my sophomore year in college. Second, on the last day of the retreat at IMS, Christopher mentioned that we were all welcome to join him for his yearly 10 plus 10 plus 7-day retreat in Bodh Gaya, India, that coming January. Then I met with a member of the UNC Chapel Hill Medical School's admission committee who looked at my rambling path and said, you know, what would really pull this application together? Go immunize Tibetan yak farmers, relocate Rwandan refugees, or something like that. So I began writing letters. It turns out that finding volunteer positions to overseas is not something I am very good at. I wrote many letters to many organizations offering to help, and the only response I got back from all those letters was a single small handwritten note from a nun at Mother Teresa's Missionaries of Charity, which said simply that they couldn't give me anything, food, lodging, or money, but that if I wanted to come help, there was a need. Based on that small piece of paper and the promise of a longer meditation retreat where the Buddha himself got enlightened, off to India we went. My year in India changed me more than most other years of my adult life. In retrospect, I'm extremely grateful for that year, but at the time I was so in it that I didn't appreciate it as much as I do now. Though service work was not new to me in context of church, Boy Scouts, hospital volunteering, and so on, going from Raleigh, North Carolina to New Delhi, India, whose beggars and commission agents hit you like a screaming wall of technicolor insanity when you walk out the door of the airport, was a total sensory assault. Things only grew more so as the year went on. What I found most striking about India is that everything is right out in the street in its full range of wonderful to horrible in a way that is very different from the US. Birth, sickness, old age, and death are all right there. I watch bodies burn on the river Ganges and in Varanasi. I saw drugged babies rented to beggars to increase their daily take. I was robbed, molested, harassed, and generally taught remarkable lessons in impermanence, boundaries, and the human condition by the good citizens of India as they understandably tried to survive and be okay in that chaotic yet wondrous place. If you have grown up in a place like India, this doesn't surprise you. But coming as I was from suburban USA, it was beyond eye-opening and into the realm of brain restructuring. Similarly, when I came back from India, it was like the symphony suddenly stopped. The doors closed and everyone was in a building or a car, and most of what I saw when traveling around were just structures and machines rather than fragile, resilient humanity in all its glory and misery. This was similarly shocking, as I had gotten used to seeing everywhere what life's rich pageant had to show. Beyond just seeing it, I found that India is interactive in a way that the United States is not. People everywhere wanted to talk, to sell things, to ask for gifts, to take me to their shop, hotel, or home, to steal what I had, or to teach me things. Many of them, had you asked them, would never have said they wanted to teach me things, but that was what I finally realized they were doing, though I often didn't appreciate this at the time. It was no accident that the first noble truth taught by the Buddha is there is dukkha, as suffering, and that this teaching was first given in India, where suffering, just one aspect of the word dukkha. Okay, so maybe that's not totally right. So suffering, just one aspect of the word dukkha, is everywhere and glaringly obvious. I should add that I spent most of my time trying to help people in some of the poorest parts of Calcutta and in some extremely poor villages outside Bodh Gaya, which are some of the poorest and most corrupt parts of India, so my perception is a bit skewed. What sick and twisted trick of my dark night had dragged me to these places at the bottom of the barrel of the human condition, I have no idea. But I now feel that something odd was doing its spiritual work, though I didn't think of it that way at the time. The deformed beggars, the starving children, the flies and mosquitoes, the coal smoke-filled air, the heroin addicts, the lepers, the people with visibly horrible diseases, and the staggering corruption, all that I got to know almost immediately. But it was mostly visual, auditory, and olfactory, even though it also had a deep emotional impact. However, when I began to get some of those diseases myself, lose weight, and become an intimate part of the dance as India began to do its remarkable work on me, that was when some of the deeper truths of dukkha really hit me, rather than just on the cushion investigating the three characteristics. I got Giardia and amoebiasis, as well as various other forms of bacterial dysentery, more times than I can count, but at least 20. I lived on something called TIS-DF, and sometimes ciprofloxacin. When I got hookworms, I took a veterinary dewormer called Kit Kat, not to be confused with the Nestle's candy bar. We got dengue, which we actually got in Cambodia in an attempt to do service there that didn't work out. It hit us on the plane to Bangkok on our way out, back to India, and I simply lay nearly prostrate for a week with fevers to 104 in a cheap, unair-conditioned hotel in Bangkok, feeling like I was going to die or tear off my aching head. I was so weak I was barely able to stand for about 5 days, crawling slowly down the stairs to get a bit of pad thai and drink some water before slowly crawling up the stairs back to my room to lay semi-delirious and pouring sweat in the unair-conditioned summer heat of Bangkok, wishing my splitting headache would finally end. I got hepatitis, likely E, as I was vaccinated against A and B, and later tested negative for C while in Bodh Gaya, and got my second case of hookworms while I had that. But given that I had no idea what Kit Kat would do to my liver, I left them untreated, tolerating their total creepiness until finally I wasn't yellow and I could walk without terrible pain in my bloated liver. I also passed a 5-millimeter kidney stone while I had the hepatitis and the hookworms. And at that point, now about 135 pounds, at 6 feet tall, dark yellow, all I could think while I was lay there in broken misery was, if one of those mosquitoes humming around the outside of my mosquito net gives me malaria, I am truly a dead man. Boy, he's making me just dying to go, no doubt. After about 8 months of almost continuous mostly gastrointestinal illnesses. Strangely, my body suddenly seemed to come to terms with the Indian flora, and the illnesses stopped. My weight didn't come back until I finally got home, but at least there seemed to have been some sort of truce. I was still drinking the local water, still eating the cheapest street food, still crossing the large rivers full of sewage barefoot to get to the villages that I was trying to help, still getting bitten by a lot of mosquitoes, but somehow it was like my immune system had figured out what it needed to do, and I was finally sort of okay. But by that time, I was moderately traumatized and dark nighting so hard that I hardly seemed to notice or care, as the illnesses just seemed to be one more element of a great wave of total misery that was breaking me down. Backtracking to the early part of my time in India, when I made it to Calcutta after a month in India, I started to work at Kaligat Mother Teresa's Home for the Dying Destitute. I think I was in shock, but not the sort of shock that was immediately obvious. I don't think that people looking at me could tell I was in shock, nor did I myself recognize that I was in shock at the time. That dawning realization about what my experiences in India had done to me would surface much later. At the time, I was energetic, engaged, interested in trying to make a difference, getting up early, walking to Kaligat, the Kali temple for which Calcutta is named. With its women lined up and down the street with goats for sacrifice, going into the home for the dying destitute, helping the men who lay there. They had tuberculosis, cancer, large sores, missing limbs, blind eyes, and other serious health problems. One of them, strangely, was a Danish tourist who had gotten hooked on cheap heroin, spent all his money on it, ended up homeless living on the streets, where he shot up with dirty needles and finally got such large infected sores in his arms that significant portions of flesh were simply gone, and you could see large swaths of arm bones through the gaping holes. He was an oddly smart, educated, articulate, and personable fellow, dying there in that home of charity in India. Like I did with the others, I helped him change his bandages and take his medications, brought him food, helped to keep him clean as his arms barely worked anymore, and did my best to try to ease his suffering in what limited ways I could. I think that the initial shock